nice to be here.
Oh, yeah, let's get a Twitter handle real quick.
Oh, Amy Larkin, NYC.
NYC, okay, great.
Yeah.
Did not want to tweet out the wrong.
No.
Oh, absolutely no.
Absolutely.
Absolutely no. So, it is wonderful to be here for two reasons. Number one, the energy in the room is really great. I felt it the second I came off the elevator, actually when I got on the elevator with some of you. But also because design can enhance the world. Aesthetically, obviously, economically, socially, environmentally, technologically, and I'm sure by the end of tonight you're going to tell me other ways. So you are the people who are going to design the future of the world, so thank you. And as I think about design, you know, I think about obviously form and function. So I thought of some of my favorite buildings or some of the more famous buildings in the world. And the form and the function were not such a great combo. So Versailles, you have a little bit of tyranny. The pyramids, you have a little bit of slavery. The Kremlin, a little more tyranny. Castillo de San Marcos in Florida, you have both tyranny, slavery, and genocide. So the form and the function is not great. So what I'm going to talk about today is a new meaning for the alignment of form and function, and that is the harmonization of the rules of business with the laws of nature. So when I talk about environmental debt, I'm talking about the financial ledger. I'm also talking about the social ledger, the aesthetic ledger, all of these ledgers. Every financial transaction has an environmental impact, and the environment is embedded in every financial transaction. I call this the cause and effect factor, and it is not limited to the effects of today. It is about long-term impact. So who here remembers the Thai floods? Who here remembers the Thai floods from a few years ago? Yes, 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 yes. Thailand was shut down. It was cataclysmic. And you could say it was because of big floods. There was a big typhoon. But does anybody have an idea what actually caused the floods to go from a terrible flood to a cataclysmic disaster? Yes! Deforestation is what? That's it. And this deforestation, most of it had happened 10 and 15 years earlier. So the trees were cut down, there was no topsoil left, and therefore there were, basically Thailand was shut down for 6 months, which is bad enough for Thailand. But then what happened? There are factories, car parts factories in Thailand for Honda and Toyota, and they were disrupted, so there were no parts for factories for the cars in Kentucky, Singapore, and the Philippines. So there were unemployed workers, regional distresses. You and I as taxpayers paid for unemployment benefits in Kentucky, Singapore, and the Philippines because of deforestation that happened 15 years earlier. So the cause and effect of the financial ledger has to be long-term. And how do we move from this current set of rules of business? The most basic rule of business is this: no nature, no business. And actually there's a growing understanding of this amongst business people. CEOs of companies that I might have really big problems with actually write almost every day in the Wall Street Journal about their concerns about climate change, drought, extreme weather, and other things. I'm going to tell you a story about how these rules of business and the laws of nature do not align. PepsiCo built a factory in Arizona about 5 years ago. And they had a tremendous amount of engineering breakthroughs. They had near net zero wastewater and energy, which is pretty spectacular. And when the engineer who designed this factory was telling me about it, I said, so this is amazing. You're going to share the technology and use it in all your factories globally, right? That's fantastic. And he said, well, you know, if water costs what it should cost, we would. If waste costs what it should cost, we would. And if energy costs. But as it is, these new technologies are a little more expensive up front, 10 to 15%. And that means we will have bad earnings reports for the next year or two. And even though within 5 years we will be paid back, we will save huge amount of money, and we will be saving wastewater energy for the world, for Arizona, for wherever else we would build a factory, we'll all be fired because our earnings reports will not be good because we will have spent more money on these factories. This is how the rules of business and the laws of nature are in direct collision. Does anybody here think Arizona needs factories that don't use water? You know, it's astonishing to imagine that that's not the law, that you are incentivized to do that instead of penalized. I want to define environmental debt for you. This is my definition of it. Polluting and you can read. Basically, you cannot separate environmental and financial piece of any transaction any more than you can separate the mind and the body. And it's a little more complicated today. So when the Maya deforested and destroyed their aquifers and their civilization, there were thriving civilizations in China and Europe, but basically the change was imperceptible. I'm sure there's a biologist who will say, actually it did have an effect in Europe and China, but Europeans and Chinese didn't notice. Today, when in Pakistan there is a huge flood, there goes 10 to 20% of the world's cotton market. Today, when the Ukraine has a heat wave, or you lose 15% of the world's wheat. When Australia or California have heat waves and droughts, there goes huge amounts of agricultural and livestock issues. So the relationships are much clearer today. Oh, a blank slide. Okay, so check out this number. In 2008, the 3,000 largest public companies were estimated to be causing $2.15 trillion of environmental damage. Okay, first of all, who do you think calculated this number? My friends at Greenpeace?
The World Bank.
No. Guesses you'll never guess, so I'll tell you. Okay.
Barclays. KPMG.
KPMG. So it's right. Who said whoa?
I did.
Yeah, because what this means is that they actually had the courage to antagonize all their clients. These 3,000 largest companies are their clients. That's how serious they feel this damage is. So there is a change in business. So when you guys enter the world with your new design degree, you have a newly open management structure ready to hear about this. So I want to think about these numbers. So in 1 year, $2.15 trillion of environmental damage. Anybody want to guess what the US deficit was in 2013? I wouldn't know. $680 billion. In 2012, it was 1.3 trillion, and in 2009, after the financial meltdown, it was 1.4 trillion. That's the US deficit that everybody's screaming about. So in 1 year, just 3,000 companies caused this. So the idea of how we have to connect the cause and effect of environmental and financial transactions and the rules of business and the laws of nature. This gives you a macro sense of it. And China has estimated that 3.5% of their GDP is caused by environmental damage. So if they say 3.5%, it might be more. Okay, so here's from macro to micro. However, this is still theoretical numbers. Puma, in 2010, decided to do what they called an environmental profit and loss statement. And you can see their estimation of what their operations cost the world, $193 million. And what percentage, I'm not gonna make you guess, unless you want to. What percentage of their profit would this have comprised? Any guesses? The alumni? Okay, I'll tell you, 72%. Yeah, so this means that the biggest polluter makes the biggest profit. This is why we need to change the rules of business to align with the laws of nature. We do not want the biggest polluter to make the biggest profit. We want the biggest polluter to go out of business or change their ways. So this is, though, still theoretical money. This is Puma very publicly with PricewaterhouseCoopers. PricewaterhouseCoopers did this calculation for them. Pricewaterhouse is the biggest competitor to KPMG. So you can see they are competing for who can calculate these numbers, these issues more. So this is still theoretical money. No one paid this. This is a big company saying, we want to do better, and we need to change the rules. So I'm all for that. So this is theoretical. This was not. I presume many of you were here for Sandy, and you didn't need a big consulting firm or any accountants to tell you that day or the next day, well, this is going to cost $100 billion or $200 billion. And that's going to be taxpayer money and private money and families and insurers, the feds, the states, the cities, the humanitarian organizations. That's real money. So why is it so hard? Now, and by the way, everybody here probably knows that Bloomberg Business Week is the foremost business publication in the world for the largest research firm, financial research firm. Again, this is where there's a lot of understanding in the business world about these issues. There's just not a lot of change of rules so that businesses can do what actually they might want to do. This is where you're going to come in and change that. So why do you think it's so hard to do this? Well, I think it's because it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's a spill here, a species there, a coal plant there, one bad chemical, one coal plant, a cancer cluster there. You know, it's pretty hard. But every time you go and design anything, you have to remember, whatever you're designing, a system, a school bus route, a playground, whatever it is, an ad campaign, you want to try to have no cuts, or as few cuts as possible, because you put them together and we're in real trouble. I'm going to talk a little bit about buildings because I'm somehow assuming, and I could be wrong, well, how many of you are going to go into buildings, design, architecture, things like that? Nobody.
Come from.
Okay, well then I'm going to probably skip through this a little bit. Yeah.
Going back to the $193 million
For Puma.
for Puma over in 2008, is that year
2010.
Year over year?
Yeah. But they didn't, in other words, they calculated it, they didn't spend it.
Right. But here's the thing, like, their incentives are all in the wrong place,
That's
right?
exactly
And so that would take, what, legislative change?
Yes, we're gonna get there.
Whoa.
Oh, I got your job set up for you. I'm gonna briefly run through some of the building stuff. Because, just briefly, they are a huge piece of the problem and a huge piece of the solution. And I won't get more specific because I think there's gonna be other things that are gonna be interesting. This is pretty interesting. By 2035, 75% is going to be new or renovated. Which means that every time you retrofit, every time you participate in a design, in anything, you have to think big and you have to think long term. I'm going to just move through some cool buildings. This is an old coal power plant, which is now an exemplar of a green building with tremendous, it was retrofit, and it's doing great. This is a super cool building, and it's designed so that people and machines supply the heating and cooling. There's no technical ventilation systems, and it's in Austria, and it's perfectly warm and cool enough. But this is my favorite. Does everybody know? Yeah, some of you do. Everybody? Okay, so on the right we have a termite mound, a big termite mound. And termites, despite the fact that they have a bad rap, certainly for anyone who owns a house, they're extraordinary in what they're able to do in these mounds. They live on a fungus that has to be around 87 degrees Fahrenheit. And in Zimbabwe, the outside is between 35 degrees and 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So how do they keep it at 87 degrees? Well, they have this way of communicating with each other. You know, like ants or bees, they have a colony and they open and close vents. And they keep it the right temperature. They keep it at one temperature. And so the building on the left, which was designed by HOK, has no conventional air conditioning or heating. And it's based on the cooling technologies of the termites, uses 90% less energy than every other building in Zimbabwe, and probably 95% less than an American building. So what inspired this? I hear most of you probably know about biomimicry, but I can't say it better than Janine Benyus, who coined the term and is the leading advocate for it. It is innovation inspired by nature, and I think that changing our culture from dominating nature or improving it to emulate it and be part of it is a pretty basic piece of all design in everything you do, no matter what field you're in. And I hope that you will take it to heart and put it into your bone marrow so that it comes up in everything you do. So let's just look at one more thing of biomimicry at work, because this is one of my favorite biomimetic inventions. So in Tokyo, they have fast trains, unlike our country. And they've had them for a long time. I rode on one 20 years ago, but the new ones, which go even faster than the ones that I've been on, had a big problem. Every time they came out of a tunnel, they caused a sonic boom. And I don't know if you've ever heard of sonic boom, but it's loud! And it was disrupting everywhere along the routes. There were a lot of tunnels. There were miserable people. It was cracking other infrastructure. It was a big problem. The chief engineer of Japan Railway was an avid bird watcher, and he noticed that kingfishers on the left, when they would go land into water, go boom! And so he thought, well, maybe it is because of the shape of their beak. So you will notice that the beak of the train was changed. No more sonic booms, and 15% improvement in energy usage. So that's pretty good. And I think that this is an example of understanding risk and connecting costs and risks. And this is, again, this is the alignment that I'm talking about. We have to connect the two sides of the ledger. There is cause and effect. Air pollution, it actually costs more than tobacco in the US for healthcare costs and mortality. And indoor air pollution is in a top 5 environmental risk to public health. It's kind of like outdoor air pollution, only it has more stuff inside, and it's enclosed. Not good. So what I want to do now is connect these costs and benefits, because what appears costly is often the best solution to long-term security, including financial security, just like what I told you about the PepsiCo factory, where it's like a 5th grader could say, well, it would be really better to build factories that don't use wastewater and energy. That's not a hard decision. It's not complicated, but somehow our governments have not found their way to change those rules. And that's a lot of what my work is about. So I think that the way we connect these costs and benefits are the personal, the political, and the financial. And I'm going to tell you a personal story. 7 years ago, I had cancer, and of course, it sucked. And then I got better, yay. And after about 2 years, when I was feeling good again, there was something emotional I could not. Felt like I had an anger that I needed to get out, not at anyone, just it was time to relieve. So couldn't figure out how to do it. So I actually went to my first meeting of a cancer support group. And I told them, hello, I'm here, I'm all better, and I'm angry. I can't figure out why. So first person spoke, and they said, well, I got cancer because I needed to find my passion. Next person, I got cancer because I needed to change my life. They're all, telling why they got cancer, and like out of me came, you got cancer because some son of a bitch executive decided that their money was worth more than your health. Found my anger, didn't I? And the amazing thing is that it's exactly what my work is, so it was perfect. I didn't have to go seeking my purpose, and my anger was quite clear. And they were very happy I never went back. Took about 7 minutes. So here it's personal. I know. Does this not look like a happy sofa to lie on with a book? Here's what's in this sofa. Well, first of all, how many people here have had personal experience with cancer, either their own or someone they love? Indoor headaches, yourself or someone you love. Kids sick from environmental illness. Okay, so in this beautiful, happy-looking sofa, there's 113 carcinogens, including flame retardant, Scotchgard, formaldehyde, chemical dyes. In a lot of sofas, 11% of the weight in cushions is from toxic chemicals. Yeah, not happy. The only way to change this.
I know.
What?
Sit on the floor.
This is a case where you get a sofa that is made of clean ingredients, and you don't use crap on it to clean it, and you spend more, and then you have less healthcare costs. But really, the only way to change this is to get political. So I'm socially liberal human, but I'm really a deficit hog. I don't want our public budgets to pay for stupid stuff. So I don't want to pay for problems if I can pay for prevention. To me, that's being a conservative. That's not what is currently the definition of conservative, but I would like to change that. I think that, and in fact, radical cooperation, I think, is the only way forward, and I'll be telling you in a little bit, I think the most gratifying work that I've done in my life is with people who I might not share this, much of a worldview, but we sure could do great work together. Because it's mutually assured survival. There is no way at this moment to move forward with security, in particular with climate. All of the defense ministers in the world, all of the treasury and finance ministers in the world are all aware climate change is a game changer in terms of disrupting everything, destabilizing everything. So that means, I was just with a big shot Republican for a few days at a meeting, and he's all about it. He's got a. I think that you would be surprised who can be allies. And I think that the only way to change the political, though, is to change the financial. And to illuminate the financial issues, which is what I am hoping to be doing with you all. Here is the ultimate environmental debt. I bet some of you have heard this statistic. Do you know how much of Louisiana's coastline is being lost every hour? An hour of football field.
Right now.
Yeah. Since I've walked into this building, a football field has gone from Louisiana's coastline.
Why? What?
Where?
Because in all of the marshland, underneath Louisiana, all of those oil and gas pipelines basically have made the marshland and the estuaries, and much of it is marshland, collapse. Plus, climate change has made the water come in. Plus, the dead zones have made the marshland less healthy. A group of environmental problems have caused this to happen. But it's not the only place where it's fairly dramatic. It's quite dramatic. So every time in your work, as you go out in the world, when someone talks about, we can't do this because it costs too much money up front, you're going to say, you're going to explain to them that the long-term costs and the long-term savings are worth it. And if you've got to get, the business cases are everywhere you look. There are business cases that show this. Whatever area you're working on, you research it. I know you will be able to find this, and then you're going to have to get political and change those rules of business. Because wouldn't it be wretched if people like you go out in the world with your intelligence and your creativity and your good intention to do good work, and you are stymied because somebody doesn't want to pay the upfront cost of something that will save money and the world within a few years.
It happens every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
So every day, people like you are going to get personal, political, and financial, and speak up, and work with others, work with other companies, because we have to change the rules of business so they are more in harmony with the laws of nature. It's that simple. So, how long have I been talking?
No, you're great. Keep going.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, what is that? Okay, so I'm going to tell one story, and this is, I would say, certainly the most gratifying work that I've done in my life. how many people here know about CFCs? That was what caused the hole in the ozone. And it's the Montreal Protocol eliminated them. I'm going to leave out the whole story. It's a good one, but I'm leaving it out. When that happened in 1992, the chemical industry said, oh, we have a replacement for CFCs, and that is HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons. So it was new refrigerants. It did not have the chlorine, which is what was causing the hole in the ozone, but it was 2,000 to 4,000 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas in its global warming potential. I don't know if you know what that means, but basically it will cause 2,000 times the damage in the same amount of time as carbon dioxide. That's what it means. So it is now, that's what it means. It's bad and it's dangerous. And in 2000, in the Sydney Olympics, Greenpeace targeted Coca-Cola and McDonald's because they said they were supporting a green Olympics, and Greenpeace said no, because it's not green because you're using HFCs. And Greenpeace had already developed non-HFC refrigeration in 1993. It's another long story I'm going to leave out and get to it. But I will say in 1993, when Greenpeace developed that refrigerator, it took it to manufacturers and governments around the world. Here, use this instead of the HFCs. And they were ridiculed because in 1983, no one cared about global warming. It was not on the radar like it is today. And so in 1993, Greenpeace invented it, and today, about 900 million of those units have been sold globally. It is the standard in the world, and guess where it finally became legal 2 years ago? US. The last major industrial country to allow it in. It's another long story I won't go into. But in 2004, Greenpeace joined with McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Unilever to form something called Refrigerants Naturally, which was basically how the Greenpeace and these corporations could work to have them change their refrigeration to eliminate HFCs. By 2008, Pepsi had joined. Coke, Pepsi, Unilever all agreed we're not going to use HFCs after 2013. All good, but you know, that's not going to change the world. It was great, it was very good work. And we said to these companies, well, how are we going to get your whole industry to eliminate HFCs? So this is when luck came in. And this is something you all who are just entering the world, you should know. If you don't have luck, if you got bad luck, bad, and if you got good luck, you really can go for broke. We had the good luck at this moment. The Consumer Goods Forum was formed. We had nothing to do with it. It was 400 of the world's largest consumer brands and retailers, all the big guns. It was the Coke, Pepsi, Unilever on one hand, and the Costco and the Walmart and the Kroger's and the Ahold and the big ones, Marks and Spencer. And it was global. And who was the first co-chair? Mukhtar Kent, the CEO of Coca-Cola, with whom we had a 7-year serious relationship because we had been on their tail, you know, like to change their refrigeration. But we also had incredible relationships with all, you know, from the engineers to the CEO. We knew them very, very well. So,
I just looked up, when you say we, who exactly are you referring to?
Greenpeace.
Okay.
So at this point, I'm sorry, at this moment I am the director of Greenpeace Solutions. And so there's a team of us globally working on this issue. Sorry. I'm speeding up, I'm skipping things because I want to get to your questions. So the next thing I know, I am giving a keynote speech to the Consumer Goods Forum's first sustainability meeting. And, you know, I was told to make a good old-fashioned Greenpeace style ask, so I said eliminate HFCs by 2015. And, you know, we worked very hard on doing the prep for this meeting. I had 19 versions of my speech. And near the end of the day, there's a big room, and the leader of the meeting goes like this to senior VP of a big company. You're gonna do this, right? You know, and you could see his face go pale, and he looked at his biggest competitor, and he said, "You're gonna do this?" She goes, "That was it. It passed." I mean, it was sort of everything is high school, even in this situation. You know, I mean, it was your biggest competitor is going to do it. I have to do it, right? Don't do drugs, right? Anyway, so I figured also then it would take 6 months to a year to wind through the whole Consumer Goods Forum, all the companies and the board. No. A month later, it was approved, and then it was announced at the Cancun Climate Talks. And this change will eliminate 1 to 2% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions over the next 40 years. And it was done by totally unlikely allies. Greenpeace and 400 multinationals. So I just want to say, if that means we can eliminate 1 to 2% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, I'm all in. You know? I think that's the radical cooperation. And when they all do it together, the rules of business change automatically because they have changed the standard for the industry. And even the United States government, because all of these big companies were for this change, actually has been pushing for changing the rules to eliminate this kind of thing. Obviously, there's a lot more to that story, but it was really, really exciting. So just to summarize, this is the framework that I lay out in my book. Number one, pollution can no longer be free and no longer subsidized. So that means pesticides that cause dead zones should not be free. An apple or a cotton or a peach that uses a huge amount of pesticide is much cheaper than one that doesn't. But it causes dead zones in the world seas. You have to account for that. Maybe organic is not so expensive. The long view must guide all decision making and accounting. Like those Thai floods. What should those trees have cost that caused a cataclysmic effect on the world's economy, not just Thailand's? In 15 years earlier, Toyota lost 2.5% of its annual output because of that deforestation and those floods. And the third is that government plays a vital role in catalyzing the clean stuff and preventing environmental destruction. We all know that there are subsidies and indirect subsidies, and at some point you'll probably hear something about external costs. Anybody here know what that means?
Can you tell us?
It's a really important thing for all of you, actually, as you move into design. The external costs of a product are what Puma was talking about. Puma's environmental costs are the external costs. They don't have to pay for it, but they should. It is external to their balance sheet, but in fact, it should be their costs. That's what they were saying. Those are external costs. So, obviously, as all of you probably know, government is hugely instrumental in funding, developing, supporting new technologies, whether that be natural gas pipelines and fracking or the internet. And I think that participating in the political process is truly important. So just to summarize, we must harmonize the rules of business and the laws of nature. And now I look forward to your questions.